What is happening with Hamlet? So many signs.
And he looked like he was in the movie Tron. Why are they all Italian guards?
That's some crazy stuff, man.
Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you're crazy. Maybe we're crazy.
Now, I got to tell you, I'm going to start off with this. So I've been going through Hamlet Act 2, Scene 2 is what we're discussing today. Nope, Act 1, Scene 2. Did I say Act 2?
There you go.
Sorry. Hamlet Act 1, Scene 2. I've read it a number of times. And every time I read it, I get excited.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? I felt like a little bit like a child who, like, you play peekaboo and they never get bored with it. That's how I felt with Hamlet. You know, it's like, oh, this is great. A ghost? What's happening now? I'm like, but I just read this yesterday and the day before that.
That's great.
Another impression. This is Jerry Lewis. No. Is that how smooth? Granted, we are familiar with the play, obviously, but just how smoothly it reads, this particular scene, regardless of the length and the soliloquies. It's like it's pretty straightforward in a lot of ways, you know.
Yeah, right.
And I read it and I almost like kick myself saying, "Why this is so clear? It's so clear." Of course, a lot more going on, but still on surface level. Maybe even more so than Scene 1. I'm like, oh, it's very simple. Claudius is like, here's what's going on, and I don't know, Hannah, what's up with you, dude? I'm good. You know, we got, you know, everybody, you know, we got Fortinbras coming, we got that taken care of. So what's your beat, dude? You know,
right?
And it's like, oh, I'm going down. So. And another thing, too, because you had mentioned in a text earlier today, dear readers, is that more questions arise when you read it and less answers. And I think I'm kind of in that frame of mind, too, because I have a different point of view every time I look at it. And to the point where I don't understand my own notes because I underline things. I'm like, why did I underline this?
Right.
That frame of mind.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, a lot to say, obviously, about this storied.
Well, I feel like people say to me when they find out that I like to play so much, and I've done it many times, that people say, "Oh, you must know it really well." And I say, "Well, I know it well enough to know that I don't really know it well enough." Meaning, every time I read it, like, there's more questions. So I'm that familiar with it. What's great about this scene too, you say it's straightforward. I feel like, so we get introduced to all of the main characters, and he does it so well. Introduces us to all the main characters really well and seamless, and drops a lot of information in a short amount of time, but it's easy to keep up with. That's what I really like about this scene.
It's one of the most plain speaking to a certain degree scenes of the play. Particularly, obviously, Claudius, you know, and of course there's an underlying evil, or whatever you want to call it, criminality beneath that, but he's pretty much states it pretty broadly. But now, and we'll come upon this. Well, you know, it begins, and this actually goes in tandem with the opening soliloquy. It begins with a soliloquy, a very long soliloquy from Claudius.
Sure. I mean, some would not technically soliloquy because he's not only speaking to the audience, but at least a monologue.
A monologue. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I begin by stating incorrectly that it is a soliloquy, and clearly that is not correct. This is not going to be so no one says the accurate study of Hamlet.
Right. But well, let me say real quick before you jump into that, where we ended the last scene is dark night, scary, a couple of guys, unsure, quiet. And then this scene opens with a flourish of trumpets, a bunch of people entering, bright and joyous. So Shakespeare goes from one extreme to the other. And I think when those two scenes are put back to back, which I believe they should be, I believe there should not be scene changes in Shakespeare. It should be lights down, scene change, music plays, lights up. If you butt those up back to back, you get the effect that I think Shakespeare wanted, which leads me on to the use of antithesis, which we're going to see throughout this scene. John Barton always said, I say always said like I knew the guy, like in his tapes that I watch, he says, if I had to tell someone one thing, if they're about to do Shakespeare for the first time and I only can give them one piece of advice, it would be spot the antithesis and make sure the arguments are clear. And we're going to see a ton of that in this scene. It's a great lesson.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's where we're starting.
But yeah. I love that. I didn't consider that, but it's true. Whereas scene one is a mood piece, but it's very dark and moody, and there's discussions of people who become important in the play. It features the villain of the play, Horatio. No other major players in the production, but it's a great foreshadowing. And right now we have this, as you so well put it, morning scene. Not in the evening, it's the morning scene. And Horatio, Marcellus, and they're coming there to impart the news they just received from the ghost appearance. And the king's in a jovial mood, and it's right. It's bright and buoyant and celebratory to a degree compared with
and even in the stage direction, I think it says like flourish of trumpets. So there's a big sound that ends up starting after this quiet ghost scene. So take it away, Paul. Start us off with kind of what happens first. What's the first thing we see?
So everybody enters, including the star of the show, the unofficial star of the show, Hamlet himself. The only one missing, I guess, would be Ophelia, if one were to be counting. And what happens is, you're correct. It is not a soliloquy, as I said earlier. Never was. It's a monologue. it's a pronouncement to courts, basically. Here, and also it's a great excuse for Shakespeare, because he's a writer, to provide some exposition. Here's the deal. Dun dun dun. Hey, it's great. Look, times are tough. Brother's dead. Damn, that sucks. But you know what? We gotta move on. And and I know it's weird that I married his sister, but thanks for being cool. And it's gonna be great. And oh, by the way, this guy Fortinbras, previous King Hamlet defeated him, but now the son wants all the lands because he think we're now weak. Nope, nothing doing. I'm gonna send these guys, but give them no power. I want to talk to you about that weird line.
That is funny, yeah.
Negotiate, none.
Right.
Go, and there's going to be. I need two of them to just give a message to basically the uncle of the bratty kid who wants to come and conquer Denmark, and say, come on, help us out here. This is ridiculous. So anyway, that's gonna be fine. And so Lear, and then he goes to the son of his long advisor. But how long? I mean, he just became king recently, so it can't be that long. Polonius, his son Laertes wants to go to France. That's where his heart is. He came back for the wedding and maybe the funeral, and then he wants to go. Oh, and the king is all about platitudes and la 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 la. At this point in the play, and he's okay, fine, you're good. There's a nice father-son moment, which you pointed out, which I took to heart, my heart is up here for some reason. And brings a lot of questions to me. Among them, okay. So, and then, rest, of course, Claudius is continuous, and then saying, Hamlet,
sure. Okay,
things are chill. What is your deal? Don't be so down. I mean, it's just not cool. It's not, it's against life. I mean, I know we get it, that it sucks, but dude, just come on, man, hang out. Don't go back to Germany. We love to have you here. It's cool. So makes me, and Hamlet's like, yeah, whatever, life sucks. So the question is, okay, so King Claudius what was his plan in terms of Hamlet? Uh, could
Great.
he have been?
I think not only is that a great question, I think that could be our question for all these characters. Again, let me just state again that you and I are looking at this through the eyes of production,
Yes.
right? So as an actor, we have to answer these questions. We have to
Yeah.
answer, who was I before the king died? What was my plan coming into this? Right. So I think those are good questions to ask that I think sometimes people who are just analyzing the play, scholars and academia, they're not asking these character-driven questions, but it's meant to be played. So I think as actors, we have to ask these questions. So I think these are good questions. Yes. Like what was the plan? Yeah.
What was the plan? I was thinking about Claudius in relation to Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, Claudius in relation to Hamlet. You and I discussed like what could have been their relationship before. And of course, even though this is not really how royalty works, I mean, with King Hamlet dead, Claudius inherits his wife's inheritance, his wife being Gertrude. So if one wants to look at it beyond any sort of, I don't know, incestual sort of thing, he is marrying a woman possibly for money, and he succeeds to the throne because his brother is dead. Of course, that's not the way it worked. Hamlet would succeed to the throne if things were normal, as you pointed out many years ago. And I'm like, that's true.
Yeah. Well, listen, maybe, I mean, I've been reading about this scene, and some that are smarter than me say it could be an election, which means before Hamlet got there, Claudius got all the advisors together and said, I need you guys to agree and to elect me as the next king, since Hamlet is off, doesn't want to be at Denmark. So it could be. I don't know that was ever the politics. I don't know the history of the politics, but you're right. It should be the son becomes king. But because Hamlet does say later, Claudius popped between the election and my hopes. So it makes me think that it isn't just a weird thing. It's based in something.
Okay.
Because, so I would think, and I think most of us would think, it would be the English system as well. Again, it's another reason why I point to the fact that these plays exist in a time that never existed. You know what I mean? Things are different, and we have to buy it as they are. Apparently the same thing happened in Norway, because right, the same thing happened there. The son didn't take over, the brother took over.
Yeah.
Which that gets driven home as well. So that is a bit of a question, like, why did Claudius take over and not Hamlet? Hamlet never seems to say, hey, that's not the politics. He does say he jumped in front of me, which makes me think he got the advisors together and they elected him. Whereas Claudius says, like, we thank you guys for going along with this, which means they helped him take over, I think. Maybe. I don't know.
So the actor, in that regard, I guess, in terms of Claudius, has a choice. Because it could be said that Claudius loves no one and is just a complete sociopath, and does not love Gertrude, just has lust in his heart. And it's just like, okay, I might as well just get the whole thing. I'll get the throne, I'll get the queen, so therefore I'll get the people. And the people love Hamlet, as they mentioned later on in the play, how much the people love him. I'll just get everybody in, and that way it'll be great. So even though he's a cold-hearted, murdering bastard, it's another title for Hamlet, he also is like, okay, I'm going to do this evil for a greater good. Almost utilitarian in thought, but not really. Or is it something else, in that maybe he really loves Gertrude? And maybe he sees his brother as a tyrant, and maybe his brother, who, from what I'm reading, I've read this scene a number of times, in addition to, of course, the play itself. King Hamlet's not around very much. He is not around. I mean, Horatio, he said, I saw him once. I'm like, that's it?
That's right. Horatio says he was a goodly king. And I think that is the only person who says anything kind about the former king, other than Hamlet, who, of course, is going to project these things, this admiration on his father. Gertrude never says how much she misses Hamlet's father. She never says, no one says, oh, your father was so great. Oh, we miss him. We're worse off, or what a great king. No one says anything kind about him, which makes you wonder why.
Yeah, and I think if I'm going to go out on a limb, I think in Gertrude's case, this was a husband that was absent, fighting wars most of the time. She was the queen, and when he was there, she did, he did. They did love each other in their own way, but it was a relationship of distance, because he was just this great man, and he was to be almost, praised and bowed down to, as opposed to an actual human being. It's possible Claudius was more the human husband that Gertrude wanted. And so therefore, what is Claudius's true view of Hamlet when the play begins? Could he have been a loving father to Hamlet? When he says, please don't go back to Germany, stay here, is he speaking just for Gertrude, or is he actually saying, dude, you're my son, man. I've known you my whole life. Let's party together. Like, could that have happened? Could that have been impossible?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the questions I wrote down, what was the relationship between Laertes and Hamlet growing up? Yes. What's the relationship between Claudius and Hamlet? What's the relationship between Polonius and Hamlet? I think in playing these roles, I think you have to answer those questions. And I go back to what I said in our last episode. The answers lie in the actors who play it.
Yes.
Right? Because we get to make those decisions. We get to say, the 2 times that I played Hamlet, I chose to make my relationship with Polonius a very positive, fun. You saw the potential there that could have been if it wasn't for these circumstances. Because I feel like Polonius can do wordplay as good as Hamlet. Polonius was almost the only one who could keep up with Hamlet, and Hamlet respected that and liked that. And I think under other circumstances that could have been good. I think Hamlet growing up, I think Polonius may have taught him some of that humor and that wordplay, just like Yorick, because Yorick was only around for the first 7 years of his life or whatever. But the actors get to choose that. Some Hamlets choose that they've always hated Polonius, and you can see that. I just don't think that's fun to watch or you get anywhere with that.
Nor does that.
Yeah, you could. I mean, he's always teasing him. He's always making fun of him, if you will. I just find more similarities in Polonius and Hamlet that I think would have been a positive thing to explore. But you're right. Those are all the questions. And so what I think what you and I should do in these episodes is try to find as many clues from the text as possible that helps inform these decisions, right? Because they're... Do what?
There's
you should read it.
Did not know that. Wow.
So let me point out at the top, Act 1, Scene 2. Okay. So the folio has so many kind of misprints and stuff. Now in the folio, it says, enter Claudius, king of Denmark, Gertrude, the queen, Hamlet, Polonius, Laertes, and his sister Ophelia, Lord's attendant. I like when Ophelia is there, but in the quarto, I believe it does not. In the quarto, it says, enter Claudius, king of Denmark, Gertrude, the queen, council, which I think is important, Polonius, his son Laertes, Hamlet.
Mine says, of course, there's the Folger, which is a bit of combination. It says, flourish, enter Claudius, king of Denmark, Gertrude the queen, the council as Polonius and his son Laertes, Hamlet with others, among them Voltimont and Cornelius. That's it.
So there you go. So you get a combination of what you think that meeting is and who you think should be there. I do think it is a council advisor meeting instead of a party like some people like to do. I don't think it's a huge public address with the public of Denmark. I don't think it's any of that. I think it is an advisor council meeting with only the important people and the people who have something to ask the king or issue with the king. Like the reason Laertes is there is because he has a question to ask the king. He needs permission. And that's why Claudius looks at him like, now, why are you here? What do you need, kind of thing. I think Hamlet is there for the same reason. I think Hamlet is there to say, hey, am I done? Can I go back to school now? Can I get the hell out of this place? So I think it's more of an advisor council meeting. That's what I
Okay.
get the feeling. Yeah. So and Ophelia being there because her father is there and her brother is there. I like Ophelia witnessing as much as she possibly can. Even later on in scenes, we'll talk about, was she there during that? Was she not? What did she see? What did she hear? Because she ends up doing all the things that Hamlet says he's going to do but doesn't do. Hamlet says, "Oh, I'm going to go mad. I'm going to pretend to be mad." She actually goes mad.
Yes.
Hamlet says, "I'm thinking about suicide." He doesn't do it. She ends up committing suicide. So she ends up doing all these things.
Mm.
So anyway, so I like the fact that Ophelia is there. And again, this opening speech, this opening scene with Claudius, does he come across as the villain? Does he come across as a good king? Does he come across as a good, balanced, smart argument? It depends on the actor playing it. I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where immediately you hate Claudius. Immediately you don't like, he's slimy. I've seen it also where you really like the guy and he seems to be doing the best he can in the difficult situation. It's up to the actor, I think.
Yeah. It's certainly,
Yeah.
maybe that's what's brilliant about it being so plain spoken, is that because the text itself doesn't slant toward a good or bad disposition, it gives room for the actor to imprint upon it what it what it wants to in terms of Claudius. He could be
Yeah.
charming, he could be stern, and not, he could be a lot of different things. He could be just goofy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Um, I mean, an interesting.
Well, and same with Polonius, and I think we'll get into this later.
Yeah.
How you play Polonius, which a lot of people end up playing him like a damn clown, which I think is a disservice. But we'll look in the text and in the history of how you should play that character, and is he intelligent? Is he good at what he does? Is he a good father? I think all those questions should be asked, and not just playing him as a buffoon because you saw some other guy play him as a buffoon and it was funny. It's like, no, let's read the play as the play was written,
Right.
Again, too, so entering this, thinking of staging. Let me show you on this episode. I think every episode I'm going to show off one of my favorite books or favorite pieces. This is Michael Pennington's book, Hamlet, A User's Guide. One of my favorite books on Hamlet. Michael Pennington played Laertes, he played Hamlet, he played Claudius, he's played the Ghost. Not all in the same production. He's played all of those, and he was on tour playing the Ghost and had a lot of backstage time and wrote this book backstage. And it is an approach for production, for the actors, for the directors, breaking it down scene by scene, what he has learned in production. Oh, it's great. It's really, really great. But one thing he talks about is in this opening scene, where do you put Hamlet? He's going to be the guy wearing black. Maybe the first audience didn't know, but by this time we know. Do you put him front and center? Do you put him off to the side? A lot of people give him a late entrance. He enters right before Claudius says, "And now Hamlet," which I think I did that, and I've done that in productions that I've been in, but I think it's important that he's there the whole time. But it's one thing you have to decide, where do you put Hamlet? And how much of a distraction is he in the moment while Claudius is speaking?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah,
You have to make those decisions. It's why I've seen 100 productions and I want to see 100 more, because these little decisions I'm watching to see what they came up with. How they feel. So talking about an antithesis, let me read just a little bit of that Claudius opening, and it's this constant balance between the two. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death. Okay, so what we knew in the last scene, we knew there was a king named Hamlet and he died. His ghost is showing up. That's all we knew. Then we see this court come in and this guy who is now the king, and he says, "Our brother, my brother." So now all of a sudden we're thinking, if we don't know the play, we're thinking, oh, this guy is the brother of the king who's dead. That's what we know right now. So we're getting information immediately. The memory be green, and that it us befitted to bear our hearts in grief and our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow. Oh, yet so far hath discretion fought with nature, that we with wisest sorrow think on him together with remembrances of ourselves. Man, is that not a great written line? I mean, it's 8 lines or whatever, 1, 2, 3, it's 7 lines, but God, that is perfectly written, beautifully written, lays out the antithesis between the two of what we're struggling with. Immediately, Claudius starts using us and our.
Yeah.
I know that can refer to the king and, the royal sense of it, but he is immediately bringing everyone in on this decision, right? We all thought this was a good idea, which is really smart, really political. He does that really well. And he's going to do it even more obviously coming up. Therefore, our sometime sister, now our queen, I mean, that's a big drop for the audience. Like, oh, holy smokes. The imperial jointress to this warlike state, have we, as 'twere with a defeated joy, more antithesis, with an auspicious and a dropping eye, antithesis, with mirth and funeral, dirge and marriage, antithesis, in equal scale weighing delight and dole, line ending, taken to wife, nor have we here embarred your better wisdoms, which have freely gone with this affair along for all our thanks. Man, is that great. That's a great speech by, and I'm talking about the character. Yes, of course, great writing by Shakespeare, but for a Claudius to come out and immediately address the awkwardness and go, listen, yes, we feel this and we feel this, but you guys said it was okay. Thank you. Man, he nailed it. I love that. I love the opening of that.
It's very kingly of him too, because the we-ness of it and the my decisions, it's all our,
Yes.
Again, the actor playing Claudius, what was Claudius doing when Hamlet Sr. was alive? What was Claudius just plotting and scheming, or did he have a haberdashery? I mean, what was he doing? Did he collect stamps? I find this cumbersome stamp collecting.
Or without playwriting too much, because I mean, I like to connect the dots, but I don't like to create a whole nother world. But the idea that possibly he was having an affair with Gertrude.
Oh, that definitely was happening too. While he was collecting the stamps.
And the haberdashery.
Yeah, and the haberdashery. At least I got the little broad I'm banging on the side here.
Right. I mean, that could be, while King Hamlet is gone, this relationship could be starting and could be brewing, which is why they're so in love now, possibly.
Right. I love the antithesis going back and forth, particularly with the for me, the most telling line, or the one that jumps out at me the most, with mirth and funeral and with dirge and marriage, that kind of says it right there. So he thanks them, and then of course they get into, this is the stuff that people tend to cut, of course, the whole business with Fortinbras and Norway, which I believe, this is another father-son story. Made to mirror Hamlet. I understand, cutting for time, but at the same token, it's there for a reason. And so I give it more weight than maybe some would, because of that reason, I suppose, because Hamlet and Fortinbras are on the same track to a certain degree. They just experience things different. Maybe Fortinbras saw his ghost too. Maybe he's like, damn, the ghost told me to do this too.
If they would just talk.
I know. What? We should have talked before you killed yourself. What are you gonna do?
Well, we also said that we're going to bring up all the ways things work better in threes, right? We're just talking about how, threes, things, 'tis here, 'tis gone. There are 3 sons avenging their father's death in this play between Hamlet, Fortinbras, and Laertes. Things just work better in threes. Yeah. So I think you're right. So he goes on. So I'll let you take this part. What do they go on and tell us about Fortinbras here?
Okay. Now follows that young Fortinbras, holding a weak supposal of our worth, or thinking by our late dear brother's death, our state to be disjoint and out of frame, colleague with this dream of his advantage, he hath not failed to pester us with message importing the surrender of those lands lost by his father, with all bonds of law, to our most valiant brother. So much for him. I love that last part. So much for him. So it's like,
So much for him.
it's pretty plain. saying, hey, the guy's being a sore loser. Now he's thinking we're weak. We're not. And so, here I go. Now for ourselves and for this time being, thus much the business is. We have here Ritz to Norway, uncle of young Fortinbras, who impotent and bedrid scarcely hears of this his nephew's purpose to suppress his further gate herein, and that the levies, the list, and full proportions are all made out of his subject, and we here dispatch you, good Cornelius, and you Voltimand, etc. Again, with this part that I laugh at every time. For bearers of this greeting to old Norway, giving to you no further personal power to the business with the king, more than the scope of these dilated articles below. What the hell? Why did he need to state that?
That is so funny. Yeah. Just do your job. Don't say, last time you screwed it up.
Yes. It's a very curious and specific line, making sure not just they know, but everyone knows that's all these guys are supposed to do. They're not negotiating.
Right. Yeah, that is funny.
It brings the question why, and to the actor playing,
Oh yeah, exactly right. So they refer to I love this is the second time we've heard Fortinbras called young Fortinbras.
Yes.
We've called Hamlet young Hamlet, which I know it's to differentiate, yes, but also you can't help but start to make that parallel, right?
Yeah.
When you start hearing that, you start to make that parallel immediately. They're kind of referred to as the same way. So it seems like Claudius wraps up this business as he thinks. It's going to turn around and bite him in the ass by the end, but he wraps it up pretty quickly. He gets the job done. He takes on this thing as like, here's what we're going to do. They said, you're going to go tell him and he's going to take care of it. And that's what we're going to do. And he moves on. I mean, he seems to be in charge and seems to be pretty good at his gig at the moment.
So what you're saying is you're a Claudius fan, and your argument is he is actually a better king than the late King Hamlet. And maybe he's the actual hero of the play.
I'm just taking my clues from the text so far.
See.
That's all my clues from the text. That's it. I do have hopes one day that I'll get, I played Claudius in a very small production, like a little warehouse theater, kind of real small. And I did Claudius and the Ghost, and man, I really enjoyed it. And I hope one day to get to play Claudius again. I think it's really interesting.
I think Claudius is a great part.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I love the way that Cornelius and Voltimand, they have this line together, in that and all things we will show our duty. Never took much in that line other than, do they say that together in unison?
Absolutely. I got to say, I love it when characters say things together in unison. Again, I always say, lean into the things that are ambiguous and lean into the things that are odd. Like what's that great, didn't Polonius say poo at one point?
Yes.
I lean into that. Find a reason why. I think maybe, I would ask the actors, those two, to find a reason. Why do they say that in unison, right? Is that the only thing they're allowed to say? Whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but find a reason why that is and play that. There's, Stoppard wrote a whole play about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Somebody needs to write a whole play about Cornelius and Voltimand.
Yes.
How they have no other power. They have no other power but just to deliver this.
Yes, to deliver lines in unison, scripted lines.
Yes.
And they have to kind of, anything they want to say beyond that, they just have to kind of experience with their face and their body.
Somebody please write a play called Cornelius and Voltimand. Yeah. That's great. Okay, I say great. So he sends them off and he does all this in front of the advisors. This is what we're going to do, blah, 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 heartily farewell. And then now he turns to kind of personal matters. And now we get to know who the other people on stage are.
He goes, Laertes, what's the news with you? What's going on? You told us some what is some Laertes? You can't speak for a reason to the Dane and lose your voice. Where wouldst thou beg, Laertes, that shall not be my offer, not thy asking. Thy head is no more native to the heart. Love that. The hand more to thy mouth than is the throat of Denmark to thy father, the father being, of course, Polonius. What wouldst thou have, Laertes? So Claudius is showing a lot of Laertes love. Claudius
speaking of, literally, as Michael Pennington or maybe, I don't know, one of these books, Harvey Granville Barker pointed out, he uses Laertes' name 4 times in 9 lines. He says the word. He's like romancing Laertes,
Got a
right? He keeps
romance
saying his
with
name.
Laertes. He's like,
He
dude,
does.
and he's like, oh, okay. And then I got to do, and then lastly with Hamlet, hey, maybe you know what? 'Cause Hamlet's a big downer. Shows up, he just
Yeah.
he's not fun. Laertes is like, let's have some fun. I want to drink and party with some women. I went to the funeral, sucked, but the wedding, awesome. Now I want to go back to party with friends.
That's a direct quote from the Bad Quarto, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to party with some women. Yeah, no, you're right. Hamlet is what we would call the turd in the punch bowl at the moment, right? He definitely is.
That movie Up the Academy, by the way.
What?
This stupid movie called Up the Academy.
No. What is
it's with Ralph Macchio and like Ron Liebman. It's a running joke in that film, Turd in the Punch Bowl.
Oh, is it really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So he turns to him, and here's the thing too. I always wondered, like, with all these question marks, why isn't Laertes answering? Why does the king have to continue on? And I think when you look at the last line of the king's speech and you see that Laertes finishes the line, right? What wouldst thou have, Laertes, my dread lord? I think it's because the king wouldn't let Laertes jump in.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like he tried. For the director and the actor, it's an opportunity to be like he tries to, and then he just continues on. Well,
Right.
no,
and then finally he has to go, my dread lord. Like, stop for a second.
Yes.
I'll answer your question.
I respect you and shut up. Yes.
Yes, right. I think. Oh, also let me point out too that Claudius, we only know his name because of the stage direction at the beginning of this scene. He's never called Claudius ever, and he's listed as king the rest of the play. Now, again, that is something that you can't possibly use in production. That's one of those Harold Bloom things. It's like, great, interesting, thanks, but there's nothing I can do with that, right? So he's asking all these questions, but then we find out that Laertes' father, whoever that is, which we don't know at the moment, is very important to the throne, to the king, which is good.
And once the states his precedent, this is where your point earlier about fathers and sons, we have that. Have you your father's leave? Let's say Polonius.
Right. Polonius is first introduced to us as a father.
Yes.
He's going to become so much more later, but he would be the father of Ophelia. He has a great scene coming up next where he's very much a father to Laertes and Ophelia. Whether you agree with his parenting skills or not, we see him in full father mode before we see him as anything else.
And that gives weight. Once you sent me that note about the importance of father to son and father in particular, it let weight to the line where Polonius says, hath my lord wrung from me my slow leave by laborious and petition, and at last upon his will I seal my heart consent, I do beseech you give him leave to go. So he may not have love for Ophelia, spoiler alert, or his own version of love, but Laertes, it's like, I love this kid,
Yeah.
Let him do his thing, man.
Yes, I think that's great. It comes from love. I even think, people love to play the speech, the neither a borrower nor lender be speech. They love to play that like, oh, here he goes. He just goes on and on. No, it's like he doesn't want his son to leave. He's trying to find those last words of advice. He's trying to hold his son close, which we know because we've read the play is the last time he'll get to see his son. He doesn't know that, but for me, it's a very fatherly thing. It's like, I want you to go, but come here. I want you one more hug. And I think that's important to know about play. He's not just a buffoon who goes on and on. He's a loving father.
It also speaks to, in addition to the existential theme in Hamlet, it's the whole father-son relationship motif is core to Hamlet's, even including Claudius and Hamlet to a sense.
Yes.
Where, Hamlet considers and actually commits patricide towards the end, but in addition to regicide, he's just a side head, this Hamlet guy. And also contemplates suicide. What is happening with Hamlet? So many sides.
Yeah. He has a side checklist. And
I know. And commits homicide with Polonius. Like, what the hell? How many sides are we talking about here?
Wow. Wow.
But the genuine love from son to father, father to son, Not so much with the ghost, with I find the apt, but definitely Polonius to Laertes, Hamlet to the idea of his father.
Yes.
And, well, we don't get it too much to the other direction from both Ophelia or Laertes, but nonetheless, it's not father-daughter. The daughters, unfortunately, the women don't do so well in this play, but can I say that? Oh, can't say that. But, they don't fare well. They
don't fare well.
Kill themselves and stuff like that.
Right.
Yes, it's very much a patriarchy type of thing, particularly in that period of time. And so, the connection between a father and son is almost otherworldly strong.
It really is. And I don't want, people shouldn't overlook the Polonius part of that equation. And I tend to think people overlook it. I just don't like the way I see Polonius played for the most part, right? When it comes to that, they just don't. I mean, you and I discovered this when you and I were doing the rehearsals for even our workshop production, which honestly, we had enough time to rehearse the scene one time and that was it. And in that one rehearsal, we discovered this is a father-son scene. I'm referring to the scene that's coming up a little bit later. We discovered we discovered this isn't just a before. This is a loving scene.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's not, I remember as a child, we haven't gotten to the senior obviously, but as a child, I remember someone in my high school telling me, oh, it's just, it's just words from a babbling fool. No, it's father and, loving words to his son that gives the impression. It's sort of, again, Hamlet to Polonius, how they are kind of paisan in a way. Polonius gives the impression that he's a fool and idiot. He is not. He's a very smart, wise man.
Yes, he's not. And I think if you play him as a fool and idiot, you get one note out of the entire play from him. But if you play them as a very smart, loving father who sometimes makes mistakes and comes up with plans that maybe don't work out, now there's a lot going on with this guy that's way more interesting to play and way more interesting to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so what's next here? What happens next?
The king said, hey,
gives us permission. Yeah.
See you later. Good luck, and now, and I love it's in the same paragraph. Take thy fare on Laertes, time be thine, and thy best graces spend it at thy will. But now, my cousin Hamlet and myself, no transition. There's no kind of bum, 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 now we're talking about Hamlet. Just okay, now Hamlet, my cousin, not much.
Yeah. Yes, which is why I think Hamlet should be there already. The first time I ever played Hamlet, and I see it all the time, Hamlet tends to enter. I don't think so. Hamlet should have been standing there waiting his turn and had to wait through this Laertes thing, had to see Laertes get what he wanted, and then gets attention. So you're right. It should be a quick transition.
Oh, yeah.
You shouldn't have to wait for Hamlet's turn.
Goes right in there. And then Hamlet, the king said, oh, how is it that, and Hamlet speaks his first line?
Yes, a little more than kin and less than kind, which, if you're watching this video and you're about to play Hamlet, will be the hardest line you will ever say in your career, ever. Because you're playing Hamlet. Guess what? You're playing Hamlet, and it's the first thing you're going to say, and you just don't want to blow the first line. It is so mental, and you're like, I want this to go well every single night. Look, I did it 8 shows a week for 5 weeks, almost 6 weeks. And that first line scared me more than any other line because you want it to start off well. You want to, you've been backstage kind of prepping and getting ready and all this stuff, and you walk in and you've got this one aside to get things started. And it's tough. It's so much weight on it.
And 2 things important to point out. Number one, it is your first line. All the work the actors put into preparing for the role.
Yes,
is placed upon that one line. And of course, you have to, as the actor, take in what is happening while you're sitting, laying down, whatever you're doing, standing through the scene. And also note, it says aside. It is not spoken directly to the king. It's not a little more than kin and less than kind, bro. Whoa, back off there, brother. It's an aside. And therefore, it carries a different color, and the actor has to take note of that, because, and it reveals also Hamlet's entire disposition, I guess, prior to seeing the ghost, at least himself.
Right. What I would say, and you and I have seen this screwed up in a lot of productions, at this point, he's not a fighter. He doesn't want to fight with Claudius. He doesn't show up going, screw you, Claudius. No. And his first snide remark isn't even heard. He's not the guy who we saw down in San Diego walk on and throw his bag down in the middle of the whole court to get attention. That's so wrong. And we're going to find out in the soliloquy coming up exactly how he feels. And he just wants to disappear, for Christ's sake. He wants to melt away like you do. Yeah, I think your point is great. It says something about his disposition. He's going to make this kind of snide remark. He's not even going to say it where anyone can hear it. That's where this kid is at right now.
And it speaks tellingly also into Hamlet in the world, in that he wants to keep his true feelings, his true self private, as much as possible. Well, as we read, and Horatio and Marcellus tell him about the ghost, he's like, well, don't tell anybody else. It's important that, Hamlet's solitude is important to him, and he's not so quick to reveal that who he presents himself in public is not exactly who he is. And when he gets to scenes, when we get to that part in the soliloquy, we'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, yes,
okay.
Of course, the double meanings, little more than kin, less than kind. And it punctuates the next line where Claudius is like, how is it that the clouds still hang on you? And he's like, oh shit, I got to answer this. And then he goes, oh no, not so, my lord. I am too much in the sun. The fact that it's stage direction says winking toward the camera, very odd. I thought, why would he do that?
In 1603 to add camera, thought that was odd.
Yes,
but
I know. Like, he was out of his time here. The screen, for some reason, is freezing a lot. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's cold outside. Anyway, I love what that line means and what it means, a double meaning. Some even say, it could mean, right, I'm too much in the sun, which is a retort to clouds. Also, the words S-O-N, right? Don't call me your son. And also being known when you were in the attention of royalty, you were in the spotlight. In other words, don't look at me. I don't want the attention right now. Too much in the sun. Fantastic. And what do you do with that as an actor? You lean into the ambiguity of it, right? You let the audience hear different things. You let it dawn on them, right? You don't try to explain, as if I can point right back here to this actor right here. You don't try to explain. It's a great poster. Nose for a second. I thought maybe
I was.
Yes.
It's directed by one of my favorite theater directors, but he tried to explain everything. And what we're about to see happen here happens, I think, a couple more times in this scene, where Claudius tries to speak to Hamlet. Hamlet cuts him down very quickly, and then the queen has to jump in. Yeah. She jumps in to kind of save Claudius's face in front of everybody, right? So how is it the clouds still hang on you? Not so, my lord, I'm too much in the sun. And the queen goes, whoa, 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 whoa. Good Hamlet. I know he'll listen to me. It'll happen again later. And I love that dynamic. And
I love the queen's text as just great writing. Good Hamlet, cast thy nighted color off, and let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark. These are very friendly lines, and they're very clear. Do not forever with thy valley. Is it valley lids?
No, I think it's veiled.
With thy veiled lids, seek for thy noble father in the dust. Thou knowest 'tis common, all that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. It's just very simple and plain.
Yes.
And just keeps it very grounded. And then, of course, Hamlet is fucking Hamlet. It's like, oh, yeah, madam, it is common. Again, the winking.
Winking into the camera. I'm really surprised.
It's people at the time, particularly people sitting in, and the groundlings, way in the back there, were like, what is happening on stage? I think they had video screens back then. Otherwise, they would have no clue.
Yeah, they were called the uplings. You had the groundlings. And the really cheap seats were the uplings. Yeah, right.
Yes.
So I, madam, it is common, again, wordplay, quick turn wordplay, super smart kid. But the queen finishes his line as if I'm not done with you, right? The queen really puts her foot down here. She has some power. Yeah.
Right.
I think those are opportunities when you're finishing a line. Those are some great opportunities, and you have to ask yourself why. Why do I come in so quickly?
One of the times I was going through this, I forgot that's what that was, and I mistakenly put my own interpretation, saying, "Oh, she pauses for the entire time and then says, if it be." Oh. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So then and then she has that key line, if it be, why seems it. It's funny, and a lot of times when I see productions and when I read it, there's no emphasis on seems. So the next part that Hamlet speaks is kind of lost. Why seems it so particular with thee? And then, of course, he goes into immediately whipping her apart.
Wow, it's so good. It's so good.
And this passage. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say we get into a little bit of what's going to be maybe not a theme, but a recurring idea of the rest of the show. The difference between showing and playing, and what's fake and what's real, as opposed to kind of the real feelings people have. He gets into a lot of theater references, acting and showing and putting on. But no, what I have inside is real. And that's going to happen throughout the rest of the play, but it starts right here.
It reminded me of In and of Itself.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, it does.
In that we are not defined by what people see, but there's a world of life that people will never see. That is also our true self.
Man, that's so good.
That's what he's saying here, because when he says, seems, Madam, nay, it is, I know not, seems, is not alone my inky cloak, good mother. It's like, hey, just because I'm wearing black and, I've got the, forced breath, crying in my eye, dejected, heavier of the visage, all forms, mood, shapes of grief, they can denote me true. These indeed seem, because they are actions that a man can play, but they're not him.
Sure, right. What he really feels, because I also think he's referring to the funeral they just had, because we're about to find out that Gertrude cried through the entire funeral, right? She was all tears, he says. Yes. But then now all of a sudden she's happy. So he's talking about, sure, all these things you see on me are things that everyone else uses to tell people they're sad, to put on a show of grief. But deep down, what you can't see is I'm really feeling all of this stuff. It's that great, again, that antithesis, that juxtaposition between those two. You people were acting fake a couple of weeks ago, but I really have these feelings. It's sharp, and it is directed sharply at Gertrude, at Claudius, maybe at Laertes, at the advisors, at everyone who was at that funeral, who were then at the wedding. Hamlet is just trying to eviscerate them.
Yes. And as we go through this part, it makes me think maybe the funeral was like the day before the wedding or something, or like 2 days before, or maybe the same day, or maybe at the same time, for all we know.
Well, we're about to look into that in this first soliloquy. The time seems to get smaller and smaller, so we're about to kind of try to make that decision.
I love also that, they are actions that a man might play. So he's saying two things. I think he's, he's denoting the fact that putting on a costume for sorrow, but also that you are, again, I'm influenced by In and of Itself, something that you suggested I watch, and you ruined me forever. I'm influenced by the fact that he's saying, this is what you see of me. My moods, shapes of grief, my black appearance, but what I'm experiencing is beyond what you can see with your eye. And I think that's so beautiful that it's both.
Right.
I'm calling you out, and I'm also telling you something. He's giving them information. It's not just fuck you. It's fuck you, but I'll let you know something. I'll give you a clue into what's happening with me.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
When he gets to solid flesh.
Yeah.
Typically, I have
So,
that.
you know,
Oh, I'm sorry.
there's little things here, and, you know, we could do a whole other, you know, series of videos just based on the difference between the quarto and the folio. But there are these differences as far as like if it's based on the quarto, you will probably see the word shapes in shapes of grief.
Yes.
The folio said shows of grief. Because the quarto says actually chapes, CHAPES, which is commonly considered a misprint for shapes of grief. Which shapes of grief work. I tend to like shows of grief just because it kind of leans into that whole kind of theatrical kind of theater, kind of acting shows of grief kind of thing. Either one, though, that's another great thing. You get to make these decisions. You get to pick the one that you like better, quarto, folio, whatever it is, you get to pick that. But yeah, so something from his mother causes him to launch into, because from his first two lines, they're very quick, his first three lines, a little more than kin, less than kind, not so my lord, too much in the sun, I, madam, it is common. He seems like, I don't want to talk. I'm not going to talk in front of you people. I've got too much going on. And then something in what the queen says seems it so particular with thee, and he launches into this, which I think is great. That's when you can really get going in that scene. And then the king tries to step in.
Well, and he steps in, but I just want to reinforce right before the king steps in, he says, but I have that within which passions show these, but the trappings and the suits of woe. Again, the outfits. You know,
yeah.
I love that extra punch. Right. And the king, response is actually, again, he's not such a bad guy. His response is pretty reasonable.
Right, and I think he's trying to save the entire room. I think it just got uncomfortable in front of the advisors, in front of the council. The whole room just got uncomfortable for a second, and it's the king's job to step in and what he does, he immediately starts with a compliment. Which is what politicians and what salesmen do. They start with that kind of that what they call the compliment sandwich. Say something nice at the end, then in the middle you can say whatever you want. He starts off with going, it's a very sweet young man, but then he's going to get into really almost berating Hamlet a little bit.
You know, it's interesting. Since we were talking about blanking on the word, opposites,
antithesis, yeah.
Antithesis, thank you. Mirth and funeral, dearth and marriage. Here's an antithesis right here. You go from the guy that is saying, I am more than what you see with your eye. There's something more going on with me, and that I am defined beyond, and what I'm experiencing is beyond what you can see. And here is the guy that's doing the opposite thing, saying, hey, this is the show I'm putting on.
Yes.
Right. He's like, what are you talking about? Oh, that was very sweet. Like, he's not being truthful. He's being like, no, this is the mask I'm putting on. Fuck this guy. This is my disposition. It's not truthful. Unlike this, Hamlet is speaking his mind. He's being a brat about it, but he is speaking a truth and then from truth to lies.
Totally. Right. From like raw truth to, I'm going to smooth this over so we don't see what's underneath it. Yeah, totally. And this is, we always talk about, like, I don't like to say there's rules in Shakespeare. There's just opportunities as far as the iambic pentameter, as far as the line endings, that kind of stuff. It's like, it's good to know that stuff because you may need it. This line is one of those moments where if you follow the iambic nature of it, the kind of the hard syllable, soft syllable, what to actually emphasize. The word commendable comes out as commendable. So this is one of those instances that I would say, don't go by the meter. If you can go by the meter all you want, but I would say commendable and not commendable. Right. Just my opinion.
I want to see an alternative Hamlet where there's nothing like that, Tobey. Or notes.
They totally screw it up.
Oh, becomes
tis sweet and commendable in your nature.
Oh my gosh, that's the I don't name names. Anyway, as we go through the king's text, which is a monologue, not a soliloquy, as you kept pointing out,
Yes.
when he implores Hamlet to stay, you would think it would behoove the king, despite Gertrude's wishes, to get Hamlet back to Germany.
Oh yeah, you should have kept Laertes and sent Hamlet out.
Right. The king. Right. That was a mistake. Definitely a big mistake. So he loves Laertes so much he agrees to give him what he wants, but Hamlet he implores to stay. And why? Right. And part of my first thought was, well, Gertrude, he wants to please his wife. Oh, then he must love his wife. Good. So, but still, if he was as treacherous as as some productions lead the audience to believe, why did he insist Hamlet stay?
Yeah, listen, I tend to choose, if there is a question, I tend to choose the fact that you love another character over the fact that you don't love another character, right? That's just kind of my go-to. So you saying, does Claudius love Gertrude? And your kind of instinct of like, oh, maybe I would start there, which makes sense that Gertrude went to Claudius and said, hey, I would really like him to stay. Maybe she's feeling a little guilty, whatever it is. I like that reasoning. But what else could it be if that's not it? I think it's far more interesting if Claudius really is in love with Gertrude. If I just think it's more interesting than just, I'm going to use this woman. Then he's just cardboard cutout of a bad guy, right?
Right. I mean, and again, it makes me wonder: would he have retired his treachery and just been a great kick-ass king?
Yeah.
Well, and would there have been no further treachery?
Yeah. No, you're right. That's a good point. So let's say, I know we're playwriting a little bit, but it informs the character. If King Hamlet had died at war or had died some other way, Claudius becomes king. What then would have been the relationship between Claudius and Hamlet? Would there have been hope for those two?
Yeah.
Right? Maybe so. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, Hamlet finds a lot of things wrong with Claudius as far as his drinking and his partying and all this kind of stuff. But maybe, is there a chance that Claudius's heart is in the right place in this moment? Is there a chance? Maybe. I'm open to it.
I'm open to that too. I mean, especially since Hamlet is so unreliable. He barely, it seemed like he didn't see his father very much, whereas he knew his uncle too well.
Yes.
Another antithesis, the enemy, his idol he barely knew. He was a man. Won't see his leg again. Whereas his enemy he knew so well, and it's because he knew him so well because he knew him so well that he felt he was less than the ideal that was his father. Again, that's if you're playing Hamlet. Hey, good for you. But if you're playing Hamlet, that's something to consider in terms of the relationship between the king, because from the text, from what we've read so far, Hamlet's great memory is with the Yorick.
Yes, that's who raised him. That's who taught him his wit, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
right. Is there any, if you're playing Claudius, is there anything to gain in already being concerned that you're going to be found out?
No.
And thinking, I got to keep Hamlet close because I've just murdered a king, and now his son is pissed off. I'd rather keep my enemies close.
A part of me says no, because if he was the suspicious type, and I've been watching a lot of Columbo lately, so I've been watching nothing but that type. The Columbo where
good.
Murder, you find out who the murderer is first.
Right at the beginning, right? Before Columbo even enters the episode, You find out who the murderer is.
So the way murderers act is that the person they are most suspicious of, they either want them dead or away from them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't track. I think it's because Claudius had the hubris the evil courage to do what he did, to commit fratricide. And because Claudius has an ego and arrogance, he had no clue. He doesn't know about the ghosts. He doesn't know that anyone could possibly think, how could anyone possibly have seen what he did? So, and so.
Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't, it only tracks that he's like, okay, sure. I mean, and that.
If that's what Gertrude wants.
Right. And I think even though he might love Gertrude, I think even if he was even a remotely suspicious man, he wouldn't cared anything about Gertrude wanted. He would have just sent Hamlet away. But because he's like, it's King, I got what I wanted, I don't need anything else. Sure, Hamlet, I mean, I don't know, I've never liked you, you've been a weird kid, but whatever, come join the party, it's cool. So,
right.
Yeah.
I think that's right, too, because I think it gives Claudius a place to go, because later on with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Claudius becomes suspicious of Hamlet. He starts thinking, what's going on with this kid? And he even has that aside later that says, anyways, we'll get to it, of him saying, him starting to feel guilty. So it gives you a place to go as Claudius. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's Gertrude that wants Hamlet to stay.
Is there anything else in the text of the King's Claudius's monologue that strikes you in the face hard?
No, I just think it's really good, and it gets more and more stern as it goes along. His choice of words are fantastic. We pray you, throw to earth this unprevailing woe, like bury it like your father, is what he's saying. I mean, it's bury it with your father and think of us as of a father. And then he does the smart thing, man, another smart thing. He says, and everybody, guess what? Our next king is going to be this kid. Hey kid, you're going to be the next king. Like, he is setting everything up in this very positive way. I think it's almost one of those dog whistle things where only Hamlet hears it as what it really is. Everyone else is kind of on Claudius's side at this point.
Yes.
You are the most immediate to our throne, with no less nobility of love than that which dearest father bears his son, do I impart to you for your intent. And going back to school in Wittenberg, it is most retrograde to our desire, and we beseech you, ben you. That hour again could be the royal we. But you mentioned earlier, which I think we don't want to forget throughout this play, the people of Denmark love Hamlet, and they, he is the. Ophelia is going to say it in her soliloquy, the observed of all observers, the glass of fashion, the mold of form. So the hour could mean us royally, but could mean the people, right? You've just gone through this horrible thing. Stay with us. Have you been gone? We've really missed you. We need you. Represent your family. Like, it's a really great speech. His mistake is, at the end, his bad choice of words is to call him his son again. Right, I think, which is why the queen has to jump in. Here in the cheering comfort of our eye, our chiefest courtier, cousin, and our son. Hamlet doesn't like that, and the queen again jumps in to save the day, I think.
One thing to note, what caught my eye, among the things Claudius says to Hamlet in this monologue, says of impious, am I pronouncing that right? Impious?
I think so. Impious stubbornness, yeah.
Yes. 'Tis unmanly grief. And, that, even back in 17th, 16th century, the worst thing you could say to a man is say you're unmanly. Mm-hmm. It emphasizes a bunch of things, and also to the fact that how, it's very much a patriarchy. I know this might be 21st century thinking, but it is very much, to be a man is to be good, to be a woman or to act like a woman or be like a woman is just criminally bad.
Right.
So it's, and also to identity. Who are you? Who's there? You are a man. You can only be a man. That's it. You have to act like a man, that's right. Act like a man, even if you cannot be a man. It just unconsciously, perhaps Shakespeare wrote that, and it seems to tie into just everything in terms of what we see, what's inside, seems, act like a man, etc., etc. Be the identity, life in of itself. Be the identity that we want you to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah. It is a sharp tactic to use.
Yes.
And I have to believe Hamlet compared to Laertes. Hamlet is the thinker and the artist, the ones who love theater, the witty, the one who hung out with Yorick, whereas Laertes comes across as more of the man, the athlete, the one who's better at fencing, the jock. Right. Yeah. Right.
Another antithesis.
Exactly right. Yep. I think so as well. Hey, did we just get a text from Rube?
We do.
I just got a text from Rube. Awesome. I'll have to, we'll have to see it.
Also, antithesis, of course, and this comes up later on, Fortinbras is an antithesis of Hamlet because he is someone who takes action. His father is killed. He says, I'm not cool with this. I am going to fight and get our lands back that were taken. So, Hamlet is the king of inaction, indecision, in a very basic level, of course. But but you see the point, the antithesis between both Laertes, who is a man of action, and Fortinbras, whereas Hamlet's like, okay, I've got the stuff I got to do, but I wonder. And then there you go.
Right. Yeah, he lays that out. Shakespeare lays that out for us to compare the two. So Queen Gertrude jumps in again. Let not thy mother lose her prayers, Hamlet. So there we go. Her mother, lose thy, I pray thee. I think that kind of answers our question. I think she says, let not thy mother lose. It's her prayer that Hamlet stays.
Yes.
I pray thee, stay with us. Go not to Wittenberg. I shall in all my best obey you, madam. Great answer, right? A pointed answer.
Yes.
And then again, Claudius does what good politicians do, makes it sound great. Why, 'tis a loving and a fair reply. It's neither loving nor fair, but Claudius is saying, wasn't that lovely? He loves us. Everyone, look how much Hamlet loves. Like, he's putting on this show. He's trying to convince others of something that's not there.
Particularly when he says, almost like in a passive-aggressive way, this gentleman unforced the cord of Hamlet. Totally by his own accord. We have absolutely nothing to do with it.
Right. We barely even suggested the idea.
We never even mentioned it, actually. And Claudius at this point, putting on a show, sit smiling to my heart in grace hereof, not joke on health, that Denmark drinks today, but the great can to the clouds shall tell, and the kings rouse the heavens shall bruit again. We speaking earthly thunder come away. So bravada, hubris. This is about me. I'm saying that I'm with all of this.
Yes, right.
And you're all with me.
It's so good. I mean, Claudius is so good at what he does in this scene from top to bottom. Like, whether you agree with his motives or what he's doing, he's good at it.
He is very good. Again, your argument that he's the better king than the previous Hamlet, again, he's got some skills.
He's got some skills.
I don't know how the previous Hamlet did with day-to-day operation. I'm just saying this guy might be pretty good with that.
Yeah, I mean, the previous king, we know, slept in his garden. I mean, who sleeps in their garden? Come on.
I know. He's away a lot. And, Horatio, who's a guy about town, I only saw him one time.
Come on. Yeah.
What's happening?
That's so funny. Okay, and then
nothing happens after that, and the play ends. So
pretty much Claudius wins.
Yes.
And then we see the power of a single man standing on stage by himself, looking directly at the audience, which I think maybe in modern theater we've gotten away from a little bit, especially after a large group. A large group was on stage and then exited. A couple of times in the play, I think there's maybe 3 of his soliloquies happen immediately after there's been a large group of people on stage and they've all left. The juxtaposition, the antithesis of all these people and now one person. And if I've learned anything, when it's done well, you can hold that moment for a long time because the audience is with you, because they know you're looking right at them and you're about to tell them the honest truth, and they're on the edge of their seat. It's something Shakespeare knew. It's so good. And listen, I made the mistake of the first time I directed it, try to play with the soliloquies a little bit, do something a little different that I thought would make them more clear. And when I watched it performed, I knew immediately, no, I've blown it. Just, if anybody goes into this play directing it for the first time, my advice is just do it the way it's written first. Try it the way it's written. Stop coming in with all these ideas that you bring into day one of rehearsal. Just do it as written and see how well that plays first before you start changing everything. And this is one of those moments. Let Hamlet stand there on stage by himself for a moment and see how powerful that is. And then let him go into his first soliloquy and listen to what the soliloquy says. That will inform you how Hamlet should behave in the scene before. That's what I would say.
And what a soliloquy it is, he, akin to the ghost himself, he is a countenance of sorrow, not anger, as you so well put before. Oh, that this too solid flesh, or soiled, depending on which version, or
sullied or sallied. I like solid a lot. I like solid.
I love that too. That this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Double meaning there. You taught me years ago. So his first time alone, and he wants to die.
Yes.
And that's like, whoa, hello. Now, granted, we've only been given a little tiny hint of his countenance as being sort of a wise ass. So child to a certain degree, but here he reveals himself fully and truthfully to the audience. And it's that feeling where, like, this is an impossible place I'm in.
Yeah.
And
yes, and the exhaustion, I think the one kind of overwhelming thing about this that I see more and more is that he's a guy suffering from grief. And back in the 1600s, sometimes cause of death was grief. They believed simply grief would kill you, right?
Oh, yeah.
And still today, I mean, just grief. And one of the side effects of grief is complete exhaustion. I mean, listen, I've experienced it. And this is what I see in this guy. He's put up some energy early on to kind of fight back a little bit, but now he just wants to disappear. Or if it wasn't for God, he would kill himself. Like he's done. He is done right now. And he wants to be done. He wants to be invisible, which is how he starts the speech. And he will end it kind of the same way. But break my heart, for I must hold. Like there's nothing I can do. In between, he gets himself riled up, but he starts and ends with, there's nothing I can do here, and I just wish I was dead. It's incredible, and it's And if you really know what's going on, then I think it's very clear on how to deliver it.
Yes, and the text, if you really take in that text, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Those are not just words, and when you really take that in, it's a guidepost to everything, as you mentioned, and, for the speech, for the rest of the play, and the text directs you as, speaking plainly. I mean, and we've often said that, go back to the text, and not enough directors do that, but it really is there. It's really kind of in your face with this one. Or that the everlasting that fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. Great double meanings, and I don't know, I guess he's a God-fearing man, this Hamlet.
Sure. I mean, we could do whole episodes on, the kind of, what they're feeling, the Christianity in this play. Yeah, I think so too. I think just those opening 4 lines tells you where his mindset is. Yes. It's why that first line was an aside.
Yes.
Right? that tells you where he is. Does he walk in and throw his bag in the middle of the court and bring attention to himself? No. All you have to do is read those first 4 lines, and you wouldn't direct that crap, right? Anyways, I guess that was my review of the play. Yeah.
Too much, exactly. Too much in the sun is right. I think what he is,
Yes.
he doesn't want to be in the sun. He is too much in the sun. He wants to disappear. You know, because he please don't pay attention to me. I don't want the attention. I just want to go away and step back and be left alone. And then he goes, oh God. This part here always got me. Is oh God. He's making a realization, I think, during that time.
Sure.
Or he's making a proclamation, oh God, and he's
right.
Is he saying, oh God, I can't believe how I feel, that how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world.
Right.
It's like, damn, life of the party, this guy,
Right. And curious choice of word there. He says seem, right? So in other words, to me, it sounds like, I know this world is beautiful. I know just a few weeks ago, I was talking about what a beautiful world and the things to explore. And now it seems to me flat and unprofitable and useless, right? Now the outside seems I can't think of any uses in this world anymore. Like it's a beautiful turn.
He relates to it specifically to himself, to me, and so he's not talking about the world, not saying the world is ugly. He's saying all the uses of this world to me.
That's a good point, because he does that again later on in What a Piece of Work is Man.
Yes.
Right. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, but yet to me, what is this quintessence of that? Great point. Yeah, I've never made that parallel before. Yeah, it's true.
Then he goes, Fiant. Am I skipping a line here? I'm just doing it from memory.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Fiant afai. Another part where I always wonder what's that about. I mean, I know what that's about, but really what's that about when he goes, Fiant afai? Like, is he saying, fuck it, shit? I mean, is it an aside? Is it
right, maybe
a breath?
Right. I mean, you know what I'm going to say. The answer lies in the actor who's playing it, right? Yes. I think all those opportunities are there. Yes. That's why it's exciting for me to direct this play is for me to see what the actor's going to come up with.
Yeah.
And for me to say, here's some opportunities. What do you think? I think that's the best question a director can ask in rehearsals of directing this play, is ask your actors, what do you think?
Right.
And let them run with that. I think that's great. I think we should be saying, and think instead of saying, this is what the answer is, in fi, ont, fi, we should say, what does that mean? Even if we have an idea of what we think, we should continue to say, what does that mean? I think exactly right.
And then he goes from that, this sort of exasperation, to a very specific description of how he sees things. It's an unweeded garden that grows the seed. Very ugly. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. So it's like he's basically painting a pitch black painting, and then he'll add some maybe brown and a different shade of black on top of it. And then the key point to that, it should come to this, what 2 months did. Is Hamlet's problem let's say Claudius did not marry Gertrude, and it was just his father's death. Would he be like, well, I don't know, things aren't too bad. I mean, father's dead, that sucks, but whatever.
Right. I loved Al Pacino as Hamlet. Yeah, very good. That's what you're pulling from. So a couple of things that I want to point out, which I think is kind of where you're going there, is in this speech, I think there's like 12 or 15 lines dedicated to how mad he is at his mother and 3 lines dedicated to Claudius. Like, it's his mother remarrying that is his big issue at the moment. Yes, his father dying unexpectedly is grief enough, but I think in this speech, it's more about his mother than it is about his, and It's not about fighting Claudius either. At the moment, it's not about. He does say, like, Hyperion to a satyr, but he's angry at his mother about what his mother did and about remarrying. That's what's on his mind at the moment. Yeah, and I think we're going to see that also in this speech. Notice how at unrest this speech is, how chaotic this speech is, how many times he interrupts himself, and
Yes.
that by the midline stops, the periods or the question mark, whatever, the midline sentence stops. There are a whole bunch of them, which means he's constantly interrupting himself. His mind is chaotic and all over the place in this speech. That's also a clue on how to deliver it.
Right. Let me not think on frailty. Thy name is woman. Like,
my favorite part of the speech. That's exactly right. That is my favorite part of this speech. He says, "Let me not think on it," and before he can take a breath, he thinks on it. The performances where we see someone put a pause between the two, I think have not read the text as written.
This is particularly, I want to say, with the soliloquies in specific, you really have to digest them and take them in. Because then when you do, that's when it will guide you. But if you give it some distance and say, these are lines I have to learn, or style I have to, to appease the director.
Right. Or I have to bring some new idea to it. You don't have to bring some new idea. When I was doing a workshop with Sandy Robbins, he used to always say, just at first, just read it as written, and from the way it's written, see how that makes you feel and start there, rather than putting how you feel on top of the language. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Let the text guide you as opposed to you guiding it to your own needs or your own artistic wants or what have you.
Yeah, right. That it should come to this. Okay, so he says, but 2 months dead. So let's start there. That's new information for the audience. So let's just say at this point, it's been 2 months. Let's just say until we learn something else. Father died, 2 months. But 2 months dead. Immediately his mind interrupts him and he says, nay, not so much, not 2. So for some reason, 2 months came to his mind and he's saying, wait a second, it wasn't even 2 months. Then he interrupts himself again because he doesn't correct himself on the time. He goes back to, so excellent a king that was to this Hyperion, do you say satyr or satyr? I've heard both.
I've been saying satyr. I keep thinking it's wrong when I say satyr. I heard you say satyr before, which I like better.
I don't know.
I've yet to hear a concrete pronunciation on it, but
okay. Both are acceptable, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Hyperion to a satyr. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Good point. Again, so loving to my mother. I love this, that he might not beteem the winds of heaven, visit her face too roughly. Now, is that true? Hamlet is the unreliable narrator at this point, right? Was he that? I love the image. Not even the winds of heaven could touch her too roughly. That's so sweet. It's lovely. But perhaps this is what Hamlet is projecting that he thought his father was. And what you and I have discussed, perhaps that wasn't him. Perhaps he wasn't that great of a husband. I don't know. I don't know. There's an opportunity. And
there's the text guiding us, which I think is what it should be doing. And then, interestingly enough, Shakespeare rhymes heaven with heaven. But this time it's heaven, capital heaven, heaven and earth, must I remember. And then instead of stopping himself, he goes, why, she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. Again, going into the melodramatic about this passionate love. See, I think Hamlet, is a man with great imagination, and he's viewing, maybe his insane passion for Ophelia onto his father and his mother. It feels otherworldly. I've never known anyone that would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. I mean, because it wouldn't track. She just would not. She would be, crying still like Niobe, all tears to this.
Right.
Day.
It doesn't track. You're exactly right. From what we just saw her arguably 3 weeks after her husband died, and she doesn't seem like appetite grown by what it fed on. Doesn't seem at all. So yeah, I want to point out that midline stop. Must I remember midline stop? And before he can take a breath, he remembers, right? So it's that chaotic mind, like, don't think about it. I can't stop thinking about it, right? That's that. Hang on him, appetite grown by what it fed on. Okay, so we go from 2 months, not 2 months. Now we are within a month.
In a month. And then he goes back and says, oh, let me not think God failed to thy neighbors, woman which we just discussed. A little man, or ere those shoes were old, with which she followed my poor father's body. Again, time, 1 month, as you mentioned, time, 1 month, 2 months.
A little, less, within a month, a little month. I mean, it's what, at this point, it's 3 weeks. It's 20 days.
It's 24 hours.
Could be right, because the funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables.
Another thing to note, Hamlet often brings up Greek mythology constantly. He brings up Niobe. He brings up Hercules. Shakespeare brings up Hercules in a lot of plays. I think Hamlet does it twice. So I don't know if that speaks to education or to sort of a connection to Greek tragedy. I'm not sure.
Sure.
But
yeah, I think so. And Niobe, which you could easily just read in the footnotes, is the woman who cried so much over the death of her children, she turned to stone, and the stone continued to cry.
Yes,
is the story. Anyways, like Niobe, all tears. Why she? The folio adds an even she, which I like. The quarto does not. O God, a beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer. And that is kind of an aside as well, married with my uncle, because the thought process is, it goes all the way back to frailty, thy name is woman. Why she married with my uncle is the thought, but his mind gets interrupted with a beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer. Like, you really have to take this speech slowly and map it out to really know where the thoughts are getting interrupted. But I love that. A beast that doesn't have reason would have mourned longer than my mom. I mean, it's very clear what he's angry at. Married with my uncle, my father's brother. So if you're in the audience now and you weren't sure what was going on, you're very aware of what's going on now. But no more like my father than I to Hercules. What I love about this, it's what Ben Kingsley said when Ben Kingsley played the role. He said, Hamlet, when Hamlet goes to choose his own opposite, he chooses Hercules, which tells you how Hamlet sees himself. He chooses big, strong hero, and he sees himself as the opposite of that.
Yeah,
it's great.
No,
it's in the text. It's in the text.
You know, and on a, I don't know, curious note, Hamlet's beef is with time. You know, it may be his mother waited a year and married Claudius. He'd still not be happy, but then, okay. So his beef is like, why so short a time? You know, and yet he himself is playing with time, and the play itself plays with time. We're not quite sure when things are happening or what have you. But again,
that's interesting. Yeah,
just a little side there.
Within a month, yeah.
Ere the salt of most unrighteous tears had left a flushing in her galled eyes, she married. Oh, most wicked speed to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. It is not nor it cannot come to good, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. One
of the most fun lines to say when playing Hamlet is, because of all the, if you lean into those kind of S's, post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. That's fun to say. And this sound, there's this slithering kind of snake sound.
And as you pointed out years ago, break my heart, for I must hold my tongue, or it could be read, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. You know, And
he's commanding his heart to break, he's telling his heart to break, but break my heart, right?
he sees himself as a weakling, and he's insanely protective. For someone who wants to die, he's crazily protective of himself. Very
That's right.
curious. Talk about antithesis. I want to die, but yet no one can know who I really am and what I really think. So I'm like, whoa, well, okay.
That's funny. Yeah. So the speech ends. What would you say if it starts with him saying, I just want to disappear, I just want to kill myself, and he goes through all this stuff that riles him up? What does it end on?
I suppose,
what is the feeling he's left with? If Horatio and those guys don't enter, what is he left, what's the feeling he ends on?
I think I'm going to go out on a limb here. He begins with a resolve. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt. And he ends with a curiosity. Exploration. He goes, oh, this is not, nor it cannot come to good. It's like he, for the first time in the speech, he speaks of a future, of something that is going to happen, as opposed to, I just want to disappear and die. It's now, oh, this is curious, and with the approach of someone we don't know who it is yet, break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. Again, that's forward thinking. That's, I'm going to exist, but I'm going to put up some boundaries right now.
Yes, I think you're right. My heart is broken, but what can I do about it? Yeah.
He saves his own life.
He's what?
He saves his own life at that moment to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's true. He's just gonna soliloquize. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna go around, he's got to hold his tongue to everybody else.
The soliloquizer. It was a great show. Anthony Hopkins played a guy. He just wouldn't shut up. People.
No.
It was really good. Very good series.
Everyone's like, "Who are you talking to?" Yeah.
Is that
okay? Great.
From it as well?
I think so. Because at the end he doesn't say at the end. He doesn't repeat the fact that I just want to kill myself and I wish I wasn't here. He says, break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. Like, that's how it is. And he almost feels like he got all that out. He still doesn't understand it. I think throughout this play, this is a guy who thought he knew the world, who thought he had things figured out. And his world gets shattered and he's trying to put the pieces back together again and nothing fits, which is why he's constantly talking it out and trying to figure out why these things are not the way I thought they were. Yeah. And I think you can point to that a lot. Yeah. So in his moment, and maybe his lowest moment, maybe only the one person in the world that he would actually want to talk to in this moment walks through the door. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful moment. It's an opportunity to immediately show the relationship, whereas unfortunately in the Paul Giamatti version, they went for comedy in this moment and blew the whole thing. So I must hold my tongue. We have enter Horatio, Bernardo, and Marcellus, which is pretty great.
And they arrive, and at first Hamlet doesn't recognize anyone because he, to a certain
I think so. I think that's how you play it. Listen, it's how I say we, because every production I've seen, and even me, that's how we play. I think that's a good way to play it. Or you could not. Or I am glad to see you well, Horatio. I do forget me. You could recognize him and then say all that together. Some say I'm glad to see you well, beat, and then he recognizes him. Yeah, I think there's opportunity there.
Horatio or do I forget myself? When was the last time they saw each other?
It's been 3 weeks. Listen, this is when you get into the travel time. So they were in Germany. They were in Wittenberg when Hamlet found out his father had died. So he had to travel to Denmark, the funeral, the wedding, and then whatever this council meeting was. You want to say a month?
Not
I'm gonna
that
say,
long.
I don't know.
See, how is it that he doesn't recognize Well, I guess he was, I can justify by saying he was just in a world of his own and he wouldn't recognize anyone, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a figure of speech, but I remember when, I don't know if I've told you this story before, when Lucas and Leon were born, my brother surprised me and showed up at the hospital. My brother lived in Denver and he showed up in a hospital in Los Angeles. And I was kind of going on no sleep. And standing there in the hallway was my brother. And my thought was, that guy looks a lot like my brother. My brother's standing right in front of me. So I was a bit of like, what? Who is this? Who's this guy that looks like my brother? And I think that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you completely did not expect him to be there. And so there too, Hamlet does not expect Horatio to be there, even though there was
I think so.
the funeral and there was the wedding, which apparently Horatio might have been at both. And yet he didn't see him.
Yeah, I mean, so when you think about, I thought about that today. When you think about a king, if you've seen like video or whatever, I'm sure you have pictures of John F. Kennedy's funeral,
Yes.
right? There's where John F. Kennedy's son was and where the rest of the crowd was. That's how I plan. Or Princess Diana's wedding, where the general public was, where,
Okay.
you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Fair enough.
That's kind of how I see the difference between Hamlet and Horatio. I don't know. That's how I'm justifying it, I think.
Fair enough. It is odd though.
Well, Horatio hasn't said, hey, Hamlet, I'm here if you need me.
Yeah, it's odd that Horatio didn't bother to contact him. He's like, at what point was Horatio going to be like, hey, I should probably let Hamlet know I'm in town? I mean, his father died, and his mother has remarried, and he's like, oh, I'm just going to wait a little bit and let Hamlet know I'm here. Just kind of let him simmer a bit. I don't know. It's again, I don't trust Horatio. I don't like Horatio.
And where was Horatio when Marcellus went and got him? Marcellus knew where to find Horatio.
Yeah. I mean, so what the hell? Something just is very odd, and I'm telling you, he's a very shady character. The say, my lord, sir, my good friend, I'll change. He says, my lord, and your poor servant ever Hamlet's like, come on, we're all the I'll change that name with you. And what makes you from Wittenberg, Horatio? And then of course they had that lovely comedic moment with Bernardo.
I love that. I think is it maybe in the play the first time we can, this scene in general, the first time we can imbue, this play with a little bit of comedy. I always say lean into it, right? If you can find comedy in it, go for it. I think there's a couple of moments in this scene where you can have some comedy, and I think him not knowing Bernardo's name is a bit.
Oh, yes. But Horatio, being the scoundrel that he is not truthful with Hamlet, because he says, a truant disposition, good my lord, I would not hear your enemy say so, nor shall you do my ear that violence to make it truster of your own report. So he's saying, you are lying.
I know.
Hamlet, he can see things against, I know you are no truant. What is your fair Nelson? And then, of course, then his mind goes to, let's drink to ourselves silly before you leave, And so Horatio, what does he say? The first thing he says, he goes, oh, well, I came to see your father's funeral. It's an odd thing to say. He didn't say, I came to pay my respects. I came to honor you. He just said, no, I came to watch.
Right. Now, that makes me think, again, going back to my question in our last episode, is Horatio born and raised in Denmark? Is he a Dane? I would think he is, because that would give me the answer of where he's been for the past few, this is his home. He's in Denmark. And he would come back to see the King of Denmark funeral. That would be a reason for him to come back.
Yeah.
And he'd have to stay because they're crowning a new king. So he has some connection to the country, and it's almost his duty to come back. Also, I don't think traveling was that easy. I don't think you go from Germany, pop in for a day, and catch the red eye back. So I think he would stay, and if he's from there, then that makes sense why he would be there. And also, Hamlet doesn't say, "What is your affair in Denmark?" Hamlet says, "What's your affair in Elsinore?"
Yes.
If Horatio was not from Denmark, If he was German, if he was English, if he was anything else, Hamlet would probably say, what are you doing in this country? Why are you here? So again, that's just me thinking about where Horatio is from. I'm starting more and more to think he is Danish, and maybe he and Hamlet knew each other before they went to school. Anyways, that's last episode.
I think Hamlet says, who already stated previously that he senses something that Horatio is not telling him, almost in a facetious manner. I pray thee do not mock me, fellow student. I think it was to see my mother's wedding. So is Hamlet, he's not being serious, but he's also telling Horatio something. He's saying, it's basically, he's imparting to Horatio his thoughts about the wedding.
Yes.
It's or projecting would be another way of putting it, but it's very curious how what text he uses.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing to think about Horatio here, the reason why Horatio seems shady, is perhaps he's perhaps he is. Perhaps he's really nervous, right? If you think about what Horatio just saw moments ago, if you think about where Horatio is coming from,
yes,
just moments ago, and having to show up and tell Hamlet this on the heels of Hamlet's father dying, Hamlet's mother remarrying, all this stuff, Horatio is probably in nervous, he's probably in off of sorts, which is why it takes him so long to get to the point as well. Maybe that's something for the actor to play.
That, but that's a very important point.
And then indeed, my lord, it followed hard upon, again, the Horatio that we will get to know, that very middle of the ground, kind of like Hamlet wants to say, wow, my mom, that whore got married quickly. And Horatio's not taking the bait. He just says, yes, it was very quickly. He's just pretty, and allowing Hamlet to kind of go off on it a bit.
And this is the humbled Horatio who's freaked out by the appearance of the ghost and is not as roguish and arrogant and snide as he was in the beginning, but he's still a little evil. So we got a little bit of that going on there.
Right.
I love this line. Thrift, Horatio, the funeral bake meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables. Would I had met my dearest foe in heaven, or ever I had seen that day, Horatio. I love the way that the bake meats coldly furnish. Great.
Again, an antithesis. If you can lay that out, you're laying out funeral. You're laying your funeral versus marriage, baked versus cold. I mean, come on, it's great.
It's great.
Great. Yeah. And I love that. Dearest foe in heaven, a bit of an antithesis, not so much. He's not saying my dearest foe in hell.
Yeah. It's very curious. It's already, he's kind of leading towards a complex vernacular when speaking, even with someone who was his closest friend. And then there's that big beat change. My father, methinks I see my father. And which is curious because it comes right before, would I had met my dearest foe in heaven, or ever I had seen that day, Horatio, my father. Did
you freeze? You look like you froze. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Well,
you're back.
Gosh, I hope it was.
You're back.
I just got a note that it says your internet connection is unstable. Jeez. Welcome to my world. Let's see. Oh, I see.
So is your love life.
Yeah, exactly. What love life? Okay. I see what the problem is. I'm making the correction. I'm making some technical things come to floor. And 4. There we go. Now we're good.
You there?
Okay.
Are we good?
Yes.
Are we good? Okay, I'll let you know if it freezes again. Okay. So yes, if you can pull off a little bit of my father, methinks I see my father, if we are thinking where Horatio and the boys, and remember, they just came from however long it takes to walk from the battlements to wherever they are now. Where, my lord, in my mind's eye, Horatio is great because they did just see. It sounds like Hamlet is about to say, I see this ghost walking around and he looks like my dad.
But what make you of this transition, or ever I had seen that day, Horatio, my father, my things to see my father, as the actor, how, I mean, when I read it, when I think about it, it seems like such a giant leap from one thought to the next.
I think it is too, but I think also in 2 Solid Flesh, there were some leaps as well. And I think I would just say when you get on your feet, you try it. I don't know. It's up to the actor, but I think wherever I had seen that day, Horatio is a line ending. So I think it gives you a chance to take some time if you want to take some time there. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've made decisions with it in the past, but I don't know that I would make those same decisions now. I think you just have to try it on your feet. Something causes Hamlet to think of his father in that moment.
Curious too that when Horatio says, "Where, my lord," Hamlet finishes the beat, finishes the 10 lines in the meter, "In my mind's eye, Horatio." So it's an interrupted thought. It's not, it almost reads like it could be read, "Where, my lord?" "In my mind's eye, Horatio." But it's not that.
Sure.
The text doesn't look like that.
Right. He comes right in on that finished line. Right. Unless you add a bunch of silent beats. Right.
I mean, but
again, it's an opportunity. If you, again, I will say there are no rules. Just because it's a finish line, if you find it better played the way you just did it, I would go with that. You know what I mean?
yes.
I'm one of those directors that says, Paul pulls that moment off better than I think we can figure out why it's written that way. And I would definitely say lean into that. And it gets a laugh, and great. We're going to go with that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that's kind of an easy way out, but that's what I would go
No,
with.
but you're right. Right. I mean, again, what's on paper as opposed to how it is performed is very, and how it is lived out is quite two different things. So.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
I saw him once. He was a goodly king.
So now I saw him. Okay. He says, okay, so yeah, I'm trying to piece together. Horatio knew, I can justify Horatio knowing the armor that King Hamlet wore when he defeated Norway, because I'm thinking it was 30 years ago and there are paintings of it. There are drawings. There's a statue of it, whatever. There's memorials. So Horatio didn't have to be there. I mean, unless he was a soldier, he wouldn't have been there on the day King Hamlet killed Norway. He has seen a statue of it. He has seen a recreation of it. He knows the history. And then here he says, I saw him once. So, which means at some point, Horatio has been around. He didn't see him on TV, right? At some point, Horatio's been around and saw the king.
Once.
Well, so far once. Later on, he's like, I knew your father. He's about to say.
I was like, what? In my note, I was like, when did you know him? You saw him one time, never, ever forgot his face, ever. That's a bit striking. I mean, there was no photographs back then. There were just artist renderings. So I'm thinking that he was obsessed with the king. Otherwise, how would he remember his face so clearly? Like
I saw him once. I don't know what he's saying.
He was goodly.
He was a goodly king.
It's an odd word. Odd choice of words too. Goodly. How often does Shakespeare use the word goodly?
Yeah, I know. I would lean into goodly. It's like Rosencrantz later on saying stuff. There was no stuff in my thoughts. That's a prime example of writer's block.
Yes.
So yes, odd line. I think we can agree. It's an odd line. Yeah.
And Hamlet also says an odd line of all the things to say about his dad, since he's like, oh my God, my dad, and like my mom, and he was a man. That was it. He says he says the most detached, unemotional thing possible.
What do you get from? And I've read. It depends on what editor you read. I don't know if it's what it has there in the Folger. But take him for all in all. Does that mean take his good with his bad? He's a man.
I think
that's what I always thought. But here in the Arden, it says, rightfully so, he was the embodiment of the ideal of manhood. Nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. So is that line saying, this is the Arden edition. Yeah.
So is that using the first folio? Was it using the?
And they're quoting, yeah, well, just, I mean, the line is the same. He was a man, take him for all in all. I always thought that meant, you know, take him for his good and his bad, his ups and downs. I'm not going to look upon his like again. He was a man. But here they're quoting Julius Caesar, Act 5, Scene 5. Nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. By saying this is a man, you're saying he's the greatest. He is the embodiment of the ideal of manhood.
Wow. So then you would take that line very differently. He was a man.
Yeah. So this is Hamlet saying, Horatio saying he's a goodly king, and Hamlet saying he was the embodiment of a man. We're not going to look upon his like again, which mirrors what he says later in the closet scene, as if to give the world assurance of a man, is what he says. He says, every god did seem to set his seal to give the world assurance of a man. So I think that's Hamlet's view of his father.
That really changes my thought on the line. Yeah, because now it's like he was a man. Take him for all in all. Like, this is I shall not. And it makes sense when he says, I should not, as opposed to, you could do the antithesis. He was a man. Take him for all in all. Ooh, but
which
on his like again.
Which is how I've played it. I've played it before with him saying he's a goodly king and me saying, look, he had his faults. Take him for everything, but he was unique. The mold was broke when he was made, kind of thing. I've usually played it like that, but now I'm understanding Hamlet's view of his father is singularly, my father was the greatest man. Yeah. And so of all those people who bought tickets when I played Hamlet before, I apologize. I got that line wrong. I owe you a refund. Sorry.
Wow. All three of you.
Yeah. All three. Yeah. I hope both of you can understand.
Yes. My lord, I think I saw him yesterday. So Horatio, with no preamble, just
comes right out with it.
Yep. Hey, my lord, I think I saw him yesterday. Huh?
Okay, I'm gonna go now.
Yeah, like I saw who? My lord, the king, your father. The king, my father. So then it's another interruption. As for the text, it's not what I originally thought. A lovely pause. My lord, the king, your father. He goes, the king, my father. Hamlet has almost a knee-jerk reaction to that.
Yeah, let me look real quickly at the Neil Freeman, because this is one of my favorite moments when I see productions to see how they play this. For you, Paul, reading this, if you had to pinpoint the exact moment where Hamlet realizes what Horatio is telling him, not that it's a ghost, but that he saw his father, where in that text exactly is that moment for you?
From what we've read so far?
Yeah, I mean in that line, saw from my lord, I think I saw him yesterday. Saw who? My lord, the king, your father, the king, my father. And those three lines, where is the moment of realization for Hamlet? And I think I bring that up because I've seen it played so many different times. For instance, Richard Burton plays it. His realization is in between saw and who. I've seen a lot of people say saw who like they didn't hear. So my lord, I think I saw him yesterday. Saw who? My lord, the king, your father. Boom. That's where it hits him.
That's
the king, my father. Some wait until after the king, my father. The lord, my lord, the king, your father. The king, my father. And then the reaction, then season your admiration for a while. Some do it before. My lord, I think I saw him yesternight. And you use those beats and you realize it. And then you say, saw who? You start kind of locking in. It's somewhere, and I think you have to be specific about where it lands. Do you know what I mean?
My, at least instinctual reaction would be none of those places, because, right, I mean, Hamlet has no idea about the ghost. My lord, I saw him yesterday, so the king, your father, the king, my father. He still has to hear.
But he has to say, right, but he says, season your admiration for a while, which means Hamlet has to be worked up for Horatio to say, calm down for a second while I tell you this.
Yeah, so I think when he says the king, my father, it's more incredulous than actual belief. I mean, because I'm thinking, because
right.
I can't at that point believe that Hamlet is going to be sold on the ghost thing that fast.
No, he hasn't even mentioned a ghost, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, right, but I'm saying at what point does Hamlet realize Horatio is telling him, I saw your father yesterday?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, that's different.
Because I think saw who can be thrown away. Or it can be like, wait, what did you say? Saw who can be what? What did you say? The king, your father. And then boom, you think you saw my father yesterday. All of a sudden it takes a turn there. So I just like that passage. And when you watch different versions, it's played wildly differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. I think I like the opportunity in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the saw who. My lord, I think, Hamlet goes off to a place he was a man. Take him for all in all. I shall not look upon his like again. My lord, I think I saw him yesterday. Saw who? Like,
Yeah.
My lord, the king, your father. And then, right, then you have that.
Boom. Yeah.
Wait for a while, you fool.
Yes, you fool.
I think that was in the ninth quarto.
It is, yeah, it's in the ninth quarto. With an attent ear, I may deliver it upon the witness of these gentlemen. This marvel to you, Hamlet interrupts or completes the line by saying, stop with all the pomp and circumstance and fucking tell me what you're talking about.
So this is where Horatio's like, now I get to shine because it's really all about me. 2 nights together had these gentlemen, Marcellus and Bernardo, on their watch in the dead waste in middle of the night, been thus encountered a figure like your father, armed at point exactly, cap a pay, appears before them and with solid march goes slow and stately by them. Thrice he walked by their oppressed and fear surprise. Like, he's enjoying himself. He's putting on a show for Hamlet. He's like, thrice he walked by.
Or he's just sticking to the details.
Yes.
Speaking of details, if you're directing this play and you're wondering how to direct the opening scene, look at this part of the play. It tells you exactly what the ghost should do. Also, I get a little confused because he says, does he say 2 nights together? And then he says, thrice he walked. And then he says, the 3rd night I kept the watch with them. I'm getting confused with the numbers, but maybe that's not something to discuss.
Right. Well, that also is in tune with, exists in a world where time and space kind of is a little bit fluid, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
Thrice he walked by the oppressed and fear surprised eyes. With his truncheon's length walked they, distilled almost to jelly with the act of fear, stand dumb, not to him.
Okay, you're right. He is embellishing. You're right. I didn't see that before. You're right.
It's right. It's almost Polonius-like in terms of, just going on. This to me in dreadful secrecy, in part they did, and I with them the 3rd night kept the watch, whereas they had delivered both in time form of the thing, each word made true and good. The apparition comes, I knew your father. These hands are not more alike. What? He saw him once and he knows him? Again, again, it asks the audience to make a leap, and we do willingly and happily. Fine.
Yeah, you're right. We leave it up to the actor playing Horatio, and we believe what he says. I debate with myself how much time I should spend on these questions about Horatio. Maybe I shouldn't spend any at all. I don't know.
In deference to our beloved Eden Harmon Bernardi, it's not that we get the answers, is that we ask the questions. That's really kind of at the heart of it. And I think we should always be asking the questions. Don't worry about the answers.
Yes, I agree. And if answers are to be had, I believe the only place you're going to find them is on stage, on your feet. Oh yeah, in the text. Yes, you're going to find in the text. But then while you're on your feet looking at the other actor doing the scene, you're going to go, oh, I know what I'm doing here. Yeah, I think so.
Right, exactly. So. I mean, you and I zooming and all that, but right. It's the answer is in the text and on your feet. That part, thank you for reminding me of that. I forgot what that was like.
No, it was. Right. It's what we spoke about earlier when you were doing the Neither a Borrow nor Lender Be, that whole scene, sitting there in rehearsal, you and I realized, or what we think that scene is about, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Great. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you don't know, Paul was a fantastic Polonius.
Paul
So when we get to the Polonius stuff, I'm just going to hand it over to Paul and let him talk about it because he knows that character very well. I knew your father. What? These hands are not for life. So again, Hamlet finishes the line.
Yes.
So what does that tell us about his state of mind, right? He's kind of anxious, and yes, he can't season his admiration any longer. Yes.
No, we cannot. Marcellus is like, dude, I'm the only truth teller in this damn play. My lord, upon the platform where we walk. You know?
So also let me ask you this. I know in the text, if I'm getting it from the text and I think about character, I don't think a guard would just, again, we're talking about the prince would just jump in. I think a guard would only speak when spoken to. I like that idea. So that makes me think Hamlet says, but where was this? He's heard enough from Horatio, and he turns and he directs that line to Marcellus.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I like that. The egotistical Horatio, since Marcellus took my lord upon the platform where we watch, did you not speak to it? And then Horatio interrupts the line, my lord, finishes the line, my lord, I did. I spoke with it. I don't know about that guy, but answer me that none. Yet once me thought and did address it in emotion like as it would speak. But even then the morning cock crew loud, and at the sound it shrunk in haste away and vanished from our sight. So again, the blowhard speaks again, kind of taking over, saying, hey, I'm a part of this. Lest you think it's Marcello's show, it is not. Marcello's show. And yes. And the Hamlet finishes the line, and vanished from our sight. It's interesting that 'tis very strange. What looks like it's an opportunity. Well, maybe it's a line ending, but he finishes the line.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that odd?
What I like, well, I think with all of these Hamlet finishing the lines, Hamlet's taking control of the conversation. Right? I think that's what it feels like. So when he says, and vanished from our sight, if Horatio, as you say, the egotistical Horatio was going to go on and pontificate, Hamlet just stops him and says, I get it. This is weird. Right? So Hamlet's taking control of the conversation.
But guess what? Horatio's such a blowhard. He goes, and I do live, my honored lord, 'tis true, and we did think it writ down in our duty to let you know of it. All right, we get it. Thanks for pointing out redundancy, egotistical, maniac, indeed, sirs, but this troubles me. So
I think he turns to the guards now. Now, I think Hamlet in this next passage with the guards and with Horatio, I think he's testing them. Like, he wants to believe, right? He wants to believe, but he's asking the questions before he believes, before his heart gets into it, before he dives in. He's trying to catch them in an inconsistency, right? He's trying to catch them in something. He's not, I don't mean that in a mean way, like, oh, I think you're lying. But I do think he's got some questions before he fully believes it. And I think that's what this next little section is.
And I love it because it stopped me in my tracks a bit, because if you're just reading Hamlet and it goes, indeed, sirs, but this troubles me, hold you the watch tonight, we do, my lord, arms say you. Now, to the casual reader, you would think Hamlet, by saying arms say you, is talking about them. Were they armed?
Oh, right, because he says, do you watch tonight? We do, armed. Yeah, we have weapons. No, you idiot. I mean, was he armed?
Yes. So for the actor, it's important that he has to communicate that clearly to the audience. I remember Olivier doing an amazing job at that in his Hamlet film from 48. And so that's why it's odd on the written page, but right, it has to be, it's a different beat entirely. And then, right, as per, Hamlet finishes all their thoughts. I don't know if this is coming off on camera, whatever. Arm, my lord, from top to toe, my lord, from head to foot. Then so you not his face.
It's a good way to catch him. I love that, because he says, oh, so he was wearing a helmet with the visor. And they go, yeah, I was. Well, then how could you possibly know he looked like my father? And they say, well, he wore, which the word beaver gets changed a lot to visor.
Yes.
Any chance you get to say beaver on stage, I say go for it.
I do often. You should have seen my Death of a Salesman Beaver show. Now, Hamlet says, without any pretext, there's no, let's see, go slow. Well, he does say, Thrice he walked. I'm trying to find the part where he talks about the sorrow of the spirits.
Oh, what looked he frowningly? You're trying to
Solemn
justify that.
march appears before them, and with solemn march goes slow and
Yeah.
steady by them. So that's and maybe informs Hamlet saying, "What looked he frowningly?"
Yeah. I think, I mean, listen, I think it's personal, but I think for me, if someone says they saw my father, I would say, did he look like he was in pain? Did he look, because he died in pain, I know. I would say, was he happy? Was he, you know what I mean? I think that's another way of saying, how did he look? He wasn't sad. Was he scared? Was he in pain? Yes, it kind of, and I like the fact that you connect it to solemnly, because I think that's a great way to connect it. For me, it makes sense because I would want to know if I thought I could contact my dad beyond the grave, I would ask him if he was happy. Do you know what I mean?
And here's the part that
Yeah, anyways.
I
Yeah.
think was cut out. Well, that's a very good point, because it's true, right? Regardless of how the parent died, you want to think, well, how did they look? Did they look healthy, or was it their corpse talking, which is a whole different, zombie? But San Diego said this part doesn't matter. A countenance more in sorrow than in anger, and they took it to mean, oh, obviously he's very angry.
Yes, man, he looked like he was in the movie Tron.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man. We've seen, and listen, if you want to have an angry ghost and you want to go against the text, whatever, then you got to cut that line. If your ghost is going to be angry, then don't you dare say a countenance more in sorrow than in anger. Then you're just undercutting your own decisions.
And right. And if you do decide to cut that line, why are you cutting it? That's another, and
Good point.
When Shakespeare doubles down, he says the unusual, pale or red. So
Yeah.
it's like a countenance more in sorrow than anger. Hamlet's saying, okay, I'm going to double down on that. Was it pale or red? Now, what if Horatio said very red? They say, well, that's not very sorrowful. Either he was too much in the sun, literally, or,
Now does what I've always thought pale or red referred to like death or living. I'm not sure what to make of that. I thought like pale would mean it's beyond the grave. Red would mean I don't know. That's what I always thought it, but I'm not sure.
It doesn't counter it. I think it both. It has that double meaning, and red, of course, the color of blood. And pale being, I guess, more death, but also could mean anger.
Red would be anger. Yeah, I think you're right. Again, look at Paul Scofield. If you don't like the Mel Gibson Hamlet, fine. But Paul Scofield as the ghost is incredible. It's really great. Anyways,
and I don't like the Mel Gibson Hamlet, so good for you.
There you go.
And he goes, nay, very pale. Interrupted line, and fixed his eyes upon you? Constantly. I would have been there. It would have much amazed you. And then Hamlet continues to play that game. Very like, stay it long.
Yeah.
One moderate haste might tell 100. Longer. And then Horatio, being an egotist, not when I saw it. It's not about you, Horatio. Calm the fuck down. Like, really? I mean, again, I think the text justified this. He's got even though he's freaked out by the ghost, he's got like an ego problem. He's got to get around.
And Hamlet's not done. He's not happy. He's not satisfied.
His beard was grizzled? No. It was, as I've seen it in his life, a sable silvered. Love that alliteration.
So now he has seen him in his life. So we know that. I've seen him once. I knew your father. It's not just I've seen pictures and statue of him. It was as I have seen it in his life, a sable silver.
Yeah, see, it was a picture he never forgot, regardless of how many years ago.
Right.
Tonight, perchance 'twill walk again. I warrant it will. So the scene is coming to its conclusion, and Hamlet. And this interesting thing is that Hamlet is sort of a little mini monologue about sort of countering the king's sort of here's what's happening. Hamlet does his own. Here's what's happening. If it is
Right.
a father's person, I'll speak to it, though hell itself should gape and bid me hold my peace. I pray you all, if you have hereto concealed this sight, let it be tenable in your silence still. And why do you feel their silence is so important? That they make that pact?
Yeah, why is Hamlet? Because I think in the next speech we're going to know what is Hamlet's mind, right? He says, "I doubt some foul play, all is not well." I think Hamlet is already feeling like there's some message I need to know, something's afoot. So he's telling these guys, shut up about it, because I think there's some information and I don't want everyone knowing.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Because we're about to get a mini soliloquy coming up here in a minute. But I love that it goes quick into what I call kind of the interrogation, pale or red, all that kind of stuff. How long was it there? Was it armed? Blah, 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 blah. And then it ends. There's not a pause. And then I will watch tonight. I will watch tonight is the continuation of a line. So his decision comes quick.
Yeah.
He's asking, and says, I'll be there. Which, Paul, was that the guard in Horatio's, was that their intent? Did they say, I don't know if they said it, but was their intent? I think it said, this ghost dumb to us, we'll talk to him. So their whole job here was to get Hamlet to come with them. They never even asked him. Hamlet just says, okay, I'll go, right?
Yes. I mean, they would hope, right. I mean, it was their duty to report it to Hamlet, considering it concerns his father. And I suppose they doubted he would just take it all at face value and say, I don't need to see it. I believe you. Wow, that's some crazy stuff, man. Crazy.
Right.
You know,
right. So if Hamlet hadn't said, I'll watch tonight, at some point, Horatio would have said, I think you need to come with us. He would have had to ask him, but he never does, because Hamlet jumps the gun on him and says, I will watch.
Horatio needs to get past himself for a second and think of others, and then that would have happened. But he's just too much himself.
If it is soon when it was, I'll speak to it, though hell itself should gape and bid me hold my peace. That's an interesting line, because later on, Hamlet will say, the spirit I've seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape, right? So he's already thinking, I'm going to go see this thing, even though it may be my end, even though it may be, I may not be able to, I shouldn't talk to it. I pray you all, if you have hitherto concealed this sight, let it be tenable in your silence, so whatsoever else may happen tonight. Give it an understanding, but no. It says, whatsoever else shall happen tonight. Okay, so great. So that's what he's saying. Whatever happens on the battlements tonight. So just to point out, this is all the same day, and it's all going to be the same day for another 2 scenes. We're still talking about day 1 in this play, and we're going to talk about day 1 all the way up until after, oh, all you hosts of heaven. The next scene is still the same day. Scene 4 is still the same day. So just for continuity's sake, this is all one day.
And no one has slept. No one has slept.
And no one will sleep.
Yes.
I will requite, I will requite your loves, so fare you well, upon the platform twixt 11 and 12. Oh, when did Horatio say the ghost shows up? Remember we were talking, is it midnight or is it 1?
1. Yes.
It's somewhere between midnight and 1, right? Did Horatio say that in this scene? Did he say?
No, it was in the scene.
He doesn't say.
1.
Okay. So he's going to say, I'm going to be there between 11 and 12. So, and then I think in scene 4, we'll get a better idea of time of when the ghost actually shows up. Upon the platform, just 11, I'll visit you. Our duty to your honor. Hamlet changes duty to loves, your loves, as mine to you, farewell. It becomes very personal for Hamlet.
Yes.
And then exit Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo. And this could be called a soliloquy, even though it's only 4 lines, but it's not considered one of his soliloquies. My father's spirit in arms, all is not well, which is a good point. We said this in the last episode. He's not showing up in the clothes he was buried in. He's not showing up in his crown, looking very kingly in his kingly robe. He's showing up in the battle armor that he wore 30 years ago, which is very interesting. And Hamlet catches that.
he next says, though, I doubt some foul play, which
I think doubt has the opposite meaning of what we think it is today.
that's what I always.
Okay.
Would the night were come, so he's anxious. Till then, sit still, my soul. Foul deeds will rise through all the earth, overwhelm them to men's eyes.
Amazing.
Again, keeping with the theme, hidden secrets. You know,
Yes.
it's
Who's there?
who's there. Yes, through all the earth, overwhelm.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much happening that people are not aware of. The earth overwhelmed them, and that the evil, there's something lurking that is hidden, because that's what evil does.
Exactly. I think you're exactly right. A couple things I like to point out. Would the night were come. So in other words, if you are staging this whole scene with Claudius and Gertrude like it's a party in the evening, and Hamlet wouldn't say, would the night were come. It can't be evening right now. It cannot be evening, because he says, would the night were come. Till then sit so my soul foul. And I love, though all the earth overwhelmed them to men's eyes. Kind of a double meaning all the earth, meaning all of mankind and everything kind of hide, or all the earth, meaning my father is buried in the earth, and that foul deed of him being murdered, even if you take all of the dirt, the earth itself, and bury it, these foul deeds will still rise. I love that double meaning.
Yeah, I didn't consider the second one, but just the way it sounds too. Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth. It's another antithesis. Deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them.
Yep.
Ah, so great.
Yeah, so full.
And then the play ends, and people are like, wow, I wonder what happened. And it's left to their imagination.
That's right. Brilliant. That's great. The next episode, scene 3, is going to be all you, my friend, because this is the Polonius show, and I'm gonna rely heavily on you, my friend, for this next scene.
Oh boy, good times.
Good times. Good stuff.
Isn't it? I mean, it struck me. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No, nothing. I was like, that's a really great combination of two great scenes with a soliloquy in the middle. We learn a lot about our main characters.
Yes, and what struck me is that as I was going through it, I'm like, oh, we have that great opening where the ghost, where Marcellus talks to, I'm forgetting his name. Is it Barbosa?
Bernardo. Well, here's a weird thing. Why are they all Italian guards? Francisco, Bernardo, Marcellus. Anyways.
So Bernardo, Marcellus, and the ghosts and Horatio and the whole thing. Great scene 1. Scene 2, introduction to Claudius and Gertrude and Tutu Solid Flesh. I'm like, this great stuff. And then it's like listening to a great album. Like, listen to all these great cuts. And then, the next one, my necessities are embarked. And
yes.
How they're embarked.
Yes.
That's the next cut. This is like a great album of like songs.
It really is. And the shifts in tone, I think, are great. Like listening to a great album, the way they've mixed it and the way they've put certain songs in certain orders, right? And then it's not till scene 3, song 3, that you get the most quotable one, right? Yeah.
Right? Biggest hit off the record.
The biggest hit off the record is not the first song. Yes, right.
You can argue that Hamlet is front-loaded with like the greatest hits and like the songs that got played on the radio all the time. And then like in the middle of it, the tracks, little deep cuts that you don't know.
Sure.
And then of course the big, you can't always get what you want, like the big finale,
Yeah.
The little somber. I mean, yeah, it's got again, our purview is certainly backed up by a lot of history, that your own personal history with the play, my own personal history with the play, seeing the play, etc. So, but reading it's astounding. This is one of the few works of plays that I can go back to and be like, ooh, I'm excited what's happening. I can't wait to what happens next.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I feel the same way reading
why
it.
we're doing this. It's why, we keep
Right.
coming back to it. It's why, why, and it's not just us. It's one other guy that is interested in Hamlet.
That's right. Not just us. There's someone else out there. Yeah. It's great. Good work, my friend.
And we did it in a little over 2 hours. So not
bad. What was that? 260 lines or something?
Something like that. Yes.
But there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on there. Yeah. And this is, I think by the end of this, you and I will be ready to direct this play. We will be
and direct ourselves in a strangely a two-person show of Hamlet.
Yeah.
Where I'll be the guy
Strangely.
just cheering on. But this is great. This is great.
Yeah.
You know, I think on our own personal journeys, this will enhance the next time we go through the play. Hopefully,
For sure.
in a production, but just, you know, it all feeds into the brain pan, as Eden would say. But in particular, this play and approaching all material, I suppose.
I agree. I think on this play particular, no work is wasted on this play. Even if you're just reading it, even if you're not cast in it, even if you're not even doing, just reading it, thinking about it, working on it, it's always beneficial in this play. Yeah.
It really is. Not bad. He did a good job. Whoever wrote this, knew what he's doing.
He's got a future. He's got a future.
I'm thinking.
Looking forward to his next one.
Maybe